In the sun-baked cradle of civilization, ancient Mesopotamia, a Roman titan met an end so gruesome it echoed through the empire's corridors for generations. Marcus Licinius Crassus, Rome's wealthiest citizen, amassed his fortune on the backs of the downtrodden, only to discover that avarice, when unchecked, becomes its own executioner. This is the chilling saga of how gold, the very essence of his power, transformed into the instrument of his agonizing demise. The year was 53 BCE, and Rome's insatiable hunger for conquest had reached a fever pitch. Three colossal figures ruled the known world through a precarious alliance: Pompey the Great, Julius Caesar, and Marcus Crassus. While his partners etched their names in history through military brilliance, Crassus was haunted by a bitter truth. He was perceived as merely a financier among warriors. His immense wealth, acquired through shrewd real estate ventures and the exploitation of slave labor, granted him political clout, but not the admiration he desperately craved. Crassus had witnessed Caesar conquer Gaul and Pompey dominate the Mediterranean, their victories reverberating through Rome's marble halls, while his own accomplishments were tallied only in sestertii. The stinging label of the third wheel of the triumvirate gnawed at his ambition relentlessly. At 60 years of age, when most men would be content to bask in their riches, Crassus envisioned only one path to true glory: a military conquest that would rival his more celebrated allies. The Parthian Empire, a realm of untold riches stretching from the Euphrates to the Indus, beckoned like a golden mirage beyond Rome's eastern frontier. This vast kingdom controlled the immensely profitable silk and spice routes that connected east and west. Crassus deluded himself into believing that conquering Parthia would not only bring him military renown, but also unimaginable wealth, gold and silver in quantities that would make his current fortune appear insignificant. The Senate, wary of his unchecked ambitions, hesitated to grant him the customary declaration of war. Undeterred, Crassus pressed forward, fueled by an unquenchable thirst for glory. In 55 BCE, Crassus arrived in Syria as governor, immediately commencing preparations for his audacious invasion. He disregarded the sagacious warnings of local commanders who possessed intimate knowledge of Parthian military tactics, dismissing their counsel as the product of cowardice. The desert kingdoms had always succumbed to Roman discipline and engineering. Why should Parthia prove any different? His confidence was further inflated by intelligence reports suggesting internal conflicts within the Parthian court, painting a picture of vulnerability ripe for a decisive Roman strike. Crassus assembled a formidable force, 7 legions comprising nearly 40,000 men, bolstered by 4,000 cavalry and an equal number of light infantry. This army represented one of the largest expeditionary forces Rome had ever mustered for an eastern campaign. Among his officers was his beloved son, Publius, a seasoned warrior who had served with distinction under Caesar in Gaul. The presence of his heir added another layer of motivation for Crassus. This campaign would establish a dynasty of military glory, solidifying his family's place in Roman history. The invasion commenced in the spring of 53 BCE, with Roman forces crossing the Euphrates at Zeugma. Initial progress appeared to validate Crassus's unwavering confidence. Local settlements either capitulated without resistance or fell swiftly to Roman siegecraft. The flat Mesopotamian terrain seemed ideally suited for Roman heavy infantry tactics, and early intelligence suggested that King Orodes VI of Parthia was preoccupied with internal rebellions, leaving the frontier sparsely defended. However, Crassus's early triumphs were merely a carefully orchestrated element of Parthian strategy. General Surena, the brilliant and youthful commander of the Parthian forces, was deliberately luring the Romans deeper into the unforgiving desert, drawing them away from their vital supply lines and into terrain that favored Parthian cavalry over Roman infantry. The sporadic skirmishes that occurred were tactical retreats, designed to lull Crassus into a false sense of security while simultaneously exhausting his army through relentless marches under the scorching sun. As the Roman army ventured further into the Mesopotamian desert, the true nature of their adversary began to emerge. The Parthians were not the disorganized barbarians depicted in Roman propaganda, but a sophisticated military power with centuries of experience fighting in their homeland's harsh conditions. Their army was structured around mobility and ranged combat, heavily armored cavalry known as cataphracts for devastating shock attacks, and nimble horse archers who could unleash a hail of arrows from incredible distances while remaining beyond Roman reach. Surena's strategic genius lay in his ability to exploit every weakness in Roman military doctrine. Where the Romans relied on rigid formations and engineering prowess, the Parthians emphasized speed and adaptability. Where the Romans anticipated set-piece battles with defined objectives, the Parthians preferred harassment and attrition. Most critically, where the Romans assumed their enemies would eventually engage in decisive combat, the Parthians were content to avoid direct confrontation, slowly bleeding their opponents dry through constant skirmishing. The Parthian psychological warfare was equally sophisticated. Scouts would materialize on distant ridges, just visible enough to keep Roman soldiers perpetually on edge, only to vanish before any pursuit could be organized. Supply convoys were ambushed by unseen enemies who struck without warning and melted back into the vastness of the desert. Sleep became a luxury, as centurions reported unsettling sounds and movements throughout the night, leaving the entire army exhausted and riddled with paranoia. Crassus began to comprehend that traditional Roman tactics were proving woefully inadequate against this novel style of warfare. His heavy infantry, virtually invincible in European forests or Mediterranean coastal plains, struggled with the oppressive heat, the treacherous terrain, and the unconventional enemy tactics. The cavalry forces he had assembled were insufficient for the fluid, mobile warfare that dominated the region, and his supply lines were becoming increasingly vulnerable to Parthian raids that seemed to originate from everywhere and nowhere. The pivotal moment arrived at Carrhae, a small city in northern Mesopotamia, where Crassus resolved to make his stand. The local geography appeared to favor his position. Hills provided defensive advantages for his infantry, and the presence of a water source would alleviate his crippling supply problems. Intelligence reports indicated that Surena's main force was approaching, offering the decisive battle that Crassus believed would vindicate his entire campaign and definitively demonstrate Roman superiority. The Battle of Carrhae commenced at dawn on June 9, 53 BCE, with Roman forces arrayed in their traditional formation, heavy infantry forming the center, cavalry positioned on the wings, and light troops screening the main force. Crassus placed himself at the heart of the center, while his son Publius commanded the right-wing cavalry. The formation was an imposing sight in the morning light, standards gleaming and armor polished, a testament to the finest military machine the ancient world had ever witnessed. Surena's approach revealed the unprecedented brilliance of Parthian military science. Instead of a conventional army formation, the Romans were confronted by something entirely alien, a purely cavalry force that moved like a single coordinated entity across the desert floor. The Parthian heavy cavalry, encased from head to toe in shimmering metal scales, formed the core, while thousands of horse archers swirled around them like a tempest, creating a constantly evolving tactical situation that Roman commanders could neither anticipate nor counter. The battle erupted with a devastating Parthian arrow barrage that blotted out the sun above the Roman formation. Unlike previous adversaries who would quickly deplete their ammunition, the Parthians had organized supply trains of fresh arrows that kept their archers continuously replenished. Roman shields, designed to deflect spears and swords, proved ineffective against the relentless missile bombardment that persisted hour after hour without respite, gradually eroding Roman morale and effectiveness. Publius Crassus, young and eager to prove his mettle, made the fateful decision to break formation and charge the Parthian center with his cavalry wing. This reckless action played directly into Surena's meticulously crafted strategy. The heavy cataphracts absorbed the Roman charge, while horse archers encircled the exposed cavalry force. Cut off from the main army and surrounded by enemies who attacked from every direction, Publius's force was systematically annihilated in full view of his horrified father and the remaining Roman soldiers. The death of Publius marked the psychological breaking point of the battle. Surena's men severed the young man's head and mounted it on a spear, parading it before the Roman battle line, while his father watched in stunned disbelief. The sight of his son's severed head bobbing above enemy ranks shattered whatever composure Crassus had managed to maintain throughout the campaign. The confident general who had crossed the Euphrates months earlier was reduced to a broken old man, barely capable of issuing coherent orders. Roman discipline began to crumble as the stark reality of their predicament sunk in. They were trapped in hostile territory, surrounded by an enemy who could strike at will while remaining beyond retaliation. Water supplies dwindled, the dead and wounded accumulated faster than they could be treated, and every attempt to break free resulted in even heavier casualties. The desert that had initially seemed like an open highway to conquest had become a prison with no apparent escape. As darkness descended, Crassus attempted to organize a retreat toward the nearby city of Carrhae, hoping that the urban environment would negate the Parthian cavalry advantage. However, the withdrawal devolved into a chaotic rout as exhausted Roman soldiers abandoned their equipment and discipline in a desperate scramble to reach safety. Thousands were cut down during the tumultuous night march, while others simply collapsed from exhaustion and heat stroke, abandoned by comrades who could barely save themselves. The remnants of Rome's once mighty eastern army stumbled into Carrhae as dawn broke, having lost nearly half their strength in a single day of combat. The proud legions that had crossed the Euphrates were reduced to a desperate mob of survivors, their standards lost, their confidence shattered, and their commander consumed by grief and the weight of his failure. Crassus had achieved the decisive battle he sought, but the outcome had been a catastrophic reversal of his expectations. Surena, instead of pressing his advantage with an immediate assault on the city, chose to demonstrate Parthian magnanimity by offering negotiations. He dispatched envoys under flags of truce, proposing a meeting between commanders to discuss terms for Roman withdrawal. The offer seemed plausible. Both sides had suffered losses, and the Parthians had undeniably proven the vulnerability of Roman forces. For Crassus, desperate to salvage something from the wreckage of his ambition, the proposal offered a glimmer of hope for saving at least some of his men. The meeting was arranged to take place in the neutral zone between the two armies, with each commander accompanied by a small retinue of officers. Crassus, despite warnings from his subordinates who suspected treachery, agreed to the parley. His desperation to end the nightmare outweighed his tactical judgment. He desperately needed to believe that some honorable resolution was still possible, that his audacious gamble had not resulted in utter catastrophe for Rome and personal ruin for himself. The events that followed remained shrouded in the fog of historical ambiguity, but the outcome was tragically clear. The meeting descended into chaos and violence, with Parthian soldiers overpowering the Roman delegation. Whether this was a premeditated act of betrayal or the result of misunderstandings and escalating tensions, Crassus found himself a prisoner of the man who had decimated his army and claimed the life of his son. The wealthiest man in Rome was now entirely at the mercy of enemies who had every justification to despise everything he represented. Surena's treatment of his captive revealed the profound depth of Parthian animosity towards Roman expansionism. This was not merely a defeated general to be ransomed or swiftly executed. Crassus embodied everything the Parthians loathed about Roman imperialism. His invasion had been an unprovoked act of aggression, motivated solely by greed and the pursuit of personal glory, launched with complete disregard for Parthian sovereignty and the lives that would be sacrificed in the process. The decision to execute Crassus in a manner befitting his character and his transgressions reflected both Parthian justice and their sophisticated understanding of symbolic communication. In a culture that prized honor and measured a man's worth by his actions rather than his wealth, Crassus represented everything that was contemptible about Roman values. His death needed to send a powerful message, not only to Rome, but to any future invaders who might mistake Parthian territory for an easy conquest. The method chosen was both pragmatic and deeply symbolic. Molten gold, the very metal that had defined Crassus's life and driven his disastrous invasion, would become the instrument of his demise. Parthian artisans heated gold until it reached its liquid state, creating a substance that would sear through human flesh, while conveying a profound symbolic meaning. The man who had worshipped gold above all else would experience its true nature, beautiful yet deadly, precious yet ultimately destructive. The execution was staged before an audience of Parthian nobles and captured Roman soldiers, transforming it into both a judicial proceeding and a public spectacle. Crassus was forced to his knees, while Parthian soldiers pried his mouth open, preventing any final words or pleas for mercy. The molten gold was poured slowly, ensuring maximum suffering while creating a spectacle that would be remembered and recounted for generations throughout the ancient world. The physical agony was unimaginable, liquid gold at temperatures exceeding 1900 F burning through his mouth, throat, and internal organs while Crassus remained conscious. But the symbolic significance was equally powerful. The man who had valued gold above human life, who had amassed his fortune through exploitation and violence, was experiencing gold's true nature as a destructive force. His idolatry of wealth had literally become his damnation. Eyewitnesses described Crassus's final moments as a grotesque parody of his life's ambitions. The mouth that had spoken of conquest and glory was filled with the metal he had pursued across continents. The throat that had delivered speeches about Roman destiny was burned beyond recognition. The body that had reveled in unimaginable luxury was transformed into a grim warning about the consequences of unchecked greed and ambition. The reverberations of Crassus's death echoed throughout the ancient world, extending far beyond the immediate military catastrophe. News of the execution reached Rome within weeks, sparking panic among the ruling elite, who suddenly realized that their eastern frontier was far from secure and that their enemies possessed both the capability and the will to inflict humiliating defeats on Roman arms. The myth of Roman invincibility, meticulously cultivated through centuries of expansion, had been shattered in the Mesopotamian desert. The political ramifications within Rome were immediate and profound. The triumvirate that had dominated Roman politics for years was irrevocably broken, leaving Pompey and Caesar as rivals rather than partners. Without Crassus's wealth and influence to mediate their competing ambitions, the two remaining strongmen embarked on a collision course that would ultimately lead to civil war and the demise of the Roman Republic. In death, Crassus had inadvertently unleashed the very conflicts he had sought to avoid through his ill-fated eastern conquest. The Parthian treatment of other Roman prisoners served as a stark reminder that Crassus's execution was not merely an act of sadistic cruelty, but part of a calculated strategy to deter future Roman aggression. Many surviving soldiers were resettled in remote regions of the Parthian Empire, where they established communities and gradually assimilated into local populations. These former Romans served as living examples of Parthian leniency towards those who had not chosen war, a stark contrast to the fate of their commander, who had instigated the conflict. The symbolic resonance of Crassus's death transcended geographical boundaries and resonated throughout the ancient world, inspiring artists, writers, and philosophers for generations. The image of molten gold being poured into the mouth of Rome's wealthiest man became a potent metaphor for the perils of excessive materialism and unchecked ambition. Plutarch, writing more than a century later, used the execution as a cautionary tale about the corrupting influence of wealth and the inevitable consequences of hubris. Modern historians continue to debate the precise details of Crassus's death, with some questioning whether the molten gold narrative is a literal account or a symbolic representation. However, the broader historical significance remains undeniable. The execution marked a turning point in Roman expansion eastward and demonstrated that the empire's adversaries were capable of sophisticated psychological warfare that extended far beyond mere military tactics. The manner of death, whether entirely accurate or not, captured the essential truths about the conflict's meaning. The location of Crassus's remains became a pawn in Parthian propaganda efforts, with his head allegedly sent to the court of King Orodes II, where it was used as a prop in theatrical performances ridiculing Roman pretensions. Some accounts suggest that Parthian actors employed the severed head during performances of Euripides' Baccha, with Crassus representing the tragic figure whose insatiable ambitions led to his ultimate downfall. These theatrical presentations transformed Roman defeat into ongoing entertainment for Parthian audiences. Archaeological discoveries from the battlefield at Carrhae continue to shed light on the extent of the Roman debacle, with unearthed weapons, armor fragments, and skeletal remains painting a vivid picture of utter military annihilation. The artifacts tell the story of a professional army that was systematically dismantled by enemies who possessed a deep understanding of both the tactical landscape and the psychological dimensions of warfare. Roman military manuals were revised based on the lessons gleaned from the defeat, but the damage to imperial prestige could never be fully repaired. The legacy of Crassus's death cast a long shadow over Roman foreign policy for decades to come, prompting subsequent emperors to exercise greater caution regarding Eastern adventures and to show greater respect for Parthian military capabilities. The catastrophe underscored the fact that Rome's enemies were not merely barbaric tribes to be subdued through superior discipline and engineering, but sophisticated civilizations with their own distinct military traditions and strategic acumen. This realization marked the dawn of a more nuanced phase in Roman expansion, one that emphasized diplomacy alongside military might. The story of Marcus Crassus serves as a timeless parable about the dangers of allowing personal ambition to eclipse wisdom and restraint. His transformation from a successful businessman to a military disaster underscores how individual character flaws can have consequences that extend far beyond personal failure, impacting entire civilizations and reshaping the course of history. The molten gold that claimed his life remains a potent symbol of how the things we covet most intensely can become the instruments of our destruction. In our contemporary world, where wealth inequality and political ambition continue to shape global events, the death of Crassus offers sobering insights into the intricate relationship between power and responsibility. His story serves as a reminder that true leadership demands more than the accumulation of resources or the attainment of tactical victories. It requires wisdom, empathy, and a profound understanding of the broader ramifications of our actions. The golden throat that silenced Rome's richest man continues to whisper warnings across the centuries about the exorbitant price of unchecked greed and the critical importance of knowing when enough is truly enough. So, the story of Crassus, a man consumed by ambition and brought down by the very gold he craved, isn't just a historical tragedy. It's a timeless lesson reminding us that true value lies not in wealth or power, but in wisdom, understanding, and a healthy dose of self-awareness. It's a stark portrayal of how easily ambition can turn to avarice, leading us down paths of destruction. What are your thoughts on Crassus? Did his story resonate with you? I'd love to hear your perspective. Leave a comment below with your questions, insights, or any other historical figures that remind you of Crassus's fate. And if you enjoyed this dive into the past and want to explore more fascinating historical narratives, be sure to subscribe. That way, you won't miss our upcoming videos delving into the captivating stories that shaped our world. Thanks for watching.